You've probably heard it a million times. Data is absolutely essential for building AI. Everyone talks about it. But what is data? Like, what does it actually look like? Okay, let's dive in and break this down.
Right, so we hear these big, bold statements. Data is the new oil. It sounds really impressive, but it's also kind of vague. What does that actually mean when we're talking about an AI? What is this oil that's fueling the machine? That's the exact question we're going to tackle.
So let's boil it all down. At its core, AI data is really just a bunch of examples that you show to a machine so it can learn patterns. Seriously, think of it less like some crazy complex formula and more like a simple study guide, you know? Often it's just in a basic table, just like a spreadsheet. Let's use a super simple example to make this real. Imagine you want to teach an AI to predict house prices. Well, you'd start by collecting a data set, something that looks just like this. It's just two columns, the size of a house and what it's sold for. That's it. This list of examples, that's your data set.
Okay, so here's the absolute key to understanding this. You give the AI an input. We'll just call it A, which in our case is the size of the house. And then you teach it to figure out the right output, which we'll call B, the price. The entire goal here is for the AI to look at tons of these examples and learn the connection, the mapping, between A and B.
Now here's where it gets interesting. Your input A doesn't have to be just one thing. It can get more complex. You could decide that A is not just the size, but the size plus the number of bedrooms. The AI then learns to use both of those things together to predict that single output, B, which is still the price.
And this right here is such a brilliant and strategic point. Your business goal is what decides what's A and what's B. So if your goal is to price a house, A is the features, B is the price. But what if your goal is to help a buyer find a house? You can just flip it. Now, the input A is their budget, and the output B is the size of the house they can probably get. See that? It's the same data, just used to answer a completely different question.
Okay, so if data is just a big list of these A to B examples, the next obvious question is, well, where do you get it from? How do you actually find this raw material to build your AI?
Generally speaking, there are a few common ways this is done. You can have people manually label things, you can download it or get it through partnerships, and then there's one of the most powerful ways for businesses to get data, just by observing behavior. Let's dig into that one a little more.
So, observing behavior. Think about any e-commerce site you've ever used. The website offers you a product at a certain price, and you either buy it or you don't. That simple action, it's generating data. In this case, your input A is the price, and the output B is whether you purchased it or not. The users are literally creating the data set for you just by browsing the website.
And you know, this isn't just about people clicking buttons. You can observe machines too. In a factory, you could track a machine's temperature and its pressure. That becomes your input A. The output B, whether or not that machine failed. If you collect enough of this data, an AI can start to predict failures before they even happen. Pretty cool, right?
All right, so knowing what data is and where to find it, that's step one. But it's just as important to know what not to do. So let's talk about two really common traps that people fall into when they're thinking about their data strategy.
I have heard CEOs say things almost exactly like this. The thinking goes something like this. We'll spend a few years getting our IT in order, collecting and organizing all our data perfectly, and then we'll hire the AI team. It sounds so logical, right? But it's actually a terrible strategy.
Yeah, that flawed approach is like a one-way street. It's this rigid step one, then step two process. A much better way to do it is to be iterative. You collect some data, and then you immediately get it in front of an AI team. Why? Because they can give you incredible feedback. They can tell your IT team what data is actually useful. Maybe they'll say, hey, we need this data every minute, not every hour. That little back and forth, that feedback loop, that's the secret sauce.
And that brings us to trap number 2. This one often starts with a big, impressive-sounding number. 100 terabytes of data. Wow, that sounds amazing, doesn't it? It has to be valuable.
So there's this really common myth that if you just pile up enough data, a giant mountain of it, an AI team can just waltz in and magically turn it into gold. But no, that's just not how it works. While more data is usually a good thing, quantity by itself doesn't guarantee value. Having a lot of data doesn't mean it's the right data or that it's even in a usable state.
And that leads us perfectly to our final and maybe most practical point about all this.
the data you get in the real world is almost never clean and perfect. In fact, most of the time, data is really, really messy.
You've probably heard this old phrase from computer science, garbage in, garbage out. It is one of the truest and most important ideas in all of AI. If you feed an AI system bad, inaccurate, or incomplete examples, it's going to learn the wrong lessons, and it will spit out bad, inaccurate predictions. It's that simple.
So what does messy actually look like? Well, here's our house price example again. We might have a price in there that's obviously wrong. I mean, a house didn't sell for $1. Or maybe we have missing values where we just don't know the number of bedrooms for a particular house. A massive part of what an AI team does is just cleaning all of this stuff up so the data can actually be used.
So if there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's this. Data isn't some kind of magic potion. It's a tool. It's a really powerful tool for sure, but it's still just a tool. Its real value comes from the problem you're trying to solve. The best strategy isn't about collecting data just for the sake of it, but about thinking carefully and collecting the right data to solve a specific, important problem. So, what problem are you going to solve?